Here are 5 LGBTQIA plus films I'd recommend to almost everyone. Keyword almost. If a movie doesn't seem like something you'd enjoy, you don't have to watch it. I'm considering this part of my Films for Beginners series, so these recommendations are mainly for people who want to watch more queer films but don't know where to start. I usually do 5 recommendations and 5 honorable mentions, and I wanted to make sure my choices represent a variety of people, cultures, time periods, and genres, so it was really difficult to narrow it down. But starting with my honorable mentions, I think Will and Harper is one of the most accessible films about what it's like to be trans in America, what it's like to come out as trans later in life, and what it's like to have a loved one come out as trans and learning how to be supportive and how sometimes you might make mistakes, but you learn from them. Jennifer's Body was weirdly misunderstood upon its release. The marketing tried to appeal to teenage boys who had a crush on Megan Fox, and Roger Ebert described it as Twilight for boys. But not only is it a feminist horror comedy, it's also one of the clearest examples of bisexuality in a film. So many movies are kind of subtle about bisexuality and don't have the characters explicitly talk about it. But one of the most iconic lines in this film is, "I go both ways." And even though the marketing was trying to cater to the male gaze by leaning into the fact that Megan Fox is attractive and there's a girl-on-girl kiss, there's a reason why this movie eventually became more popular with female audiences and became a cult classic. And I think that's because it made a lot of bisexual or questioning women feel seen. Speaking of movies that were critically panned and went on to become cult classics, But I'm a Cheerleader is a fantastic satire about discovering and embracing your sexuality. It's delightfully campy, colorful, and so much fun. The Watermelon Woman was the first feature film directed by a Black lesbian, and honestly, we need more stories from Black queer women, but that's not the only reason why I'm recommending it. It's both a good movie and an important one. In addition to being historically significant for its exploration of race, gender, and sexuality, it's also an inspiring film for filmmakers or artists in general. The movie itself is about filmmaking, but also the fact that this movie was made on such a low budget and all the effort that went into acquiring that budget is really inspiring. I feel like it's a good reminder that if you have a story you want to tell, to try your best to make it happen. I know I'm recommending movies, but I'm going to break my own rules with this one since it's an honorable mention. I don't think there are enough movies with asexual representation. I've seen a few, but by far the best asexual representation I've ever seen is in the show BoJack Horseman. So even though it's a TV show, not a movie, I highly recommend it. And if you're a filmmaker and you're watching this, maybe consider having an ace protagonist in your next film. Now on to my 5 recommendations. Paris is Burning is one of the most important documentaries ever made and one of the most important films in the history of queer cinema. Not only is it insightful and enlightening about a variety of cultures and communities, it's entertaining and so well crafted. I literally do not know anyone who dislikes this movie. And if anyone comments on this video and tells me they don't like it, guess what? I don't know you. Saving Face is one of my favorite romantic comedies. I feel like so many films with gay characters end up being depressing or tragic, but back in 2004, Alice Wu gave us this gem, and it's so refreshing to see a lesbian romance film that wasn't sad. It's endearing, funny, and full of heart. It's also relatable for anyone who's closeted and struggling to come out to their very traditional parents. Moonlight is such a beautiful and empathetic portrait of self-discovery. There's really nothing about this film that I can say that hasn't already been said. There are a lot of movies I could have picked for this list, but I think it's important to highlight that the LGBTQ acronym is about sexual orientation and gender identity. And Moonlight isn't just about homosexuality, it's also about masculinity. It's about figuring out who you are and discovering your place in the world when society is trying to dictate how you should look and act when it comes to sexuality, gender, race, and social class. Bound is a fantastic neo-noir erotic crime thriller and the directorial debut of 2 of the most famous trans filmmakers, the Wachowskis. I feel like it wasn't that common for 90s crime thrillers to involve a sapphic romance, so this one felt very ahead of its time. This one definitely won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I think Funeral Parade of Roses is one of the most essential parts of queer film history. I was in awe of this film when I saw it because all I knew was that it was a loose adaptation of Oedipus Rex. I didn't know it was this groundbreaking experimental film that explores how both gender and sexuality are fluid. I had no idea movies like this were being made in Japan in the 1960s. And I know there are some people in this world who seem to think being transgender is just a recent trend perpetuated by woke white liberals, and this movie single-handedly debunks that myth. I doubt any of those people are watching this video, but just in case, friendly reminder that trans people existed long before you or I were ever even born. Those are the 5 movies I picked, but I know there are a ton of incredible films I left out, so comment with the ones you'd recommend to almost everyone.